Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel where today we are doing a full review of Chimes at Midnight by Seanan McGuire, the 7th book in the October Daye series. This book is a reread for me. I have actually read the entire series, and because I've already read the entire series, I do break up my reviews into 3 parts. The first part is a non-spoilery review for this book. The second part is my thoughts and feelings about this book that do spoil it. And then the third section are my thoughts and feelings that spoil things that happen later in the series. So, and I do this so that you can choose when to click away so that you are not spoiled for anything that you don't want to be spoiled for. So, with that, let's jump right in and start with a description. So the October Daye series is a series of books about October Daye, our main character. And she is half fae, half human, and a knight. And she is frequently asked to solve very strange problems because she is the one that is best suited to solve these problems. In this particular book, she is taking on the goblin fruit trade. Goblin fruit is a drug. If you are full-blood fae, it gives you very pleasant dreams. However, if you have even a drop of human blood in you, it is a very unpleasant experience because you are immediately addicted to it, and you will stop at nothing to get your next fix, and you will waste away to nothing. This is kind of a thing where once you are hooked on goblin fruit, that's just how it is until you die, which is going to be much sooner than you would have otherwise died. And Toby has decided that this is not okay, and so she is taking it on. She goes to her queen, the Queen of the Mists, and says, please give me your help, and the queen instead banishes her. And then it all goes from there. So let's talk about the world building. The world building continues to be lovely. It is very nicely integrated into just the story itself. We're finding out about where fairy keeps its histories and finding out a little bit more about the Shack, and it's so nice. And we're just getting these little bits and pieces again that are just naturally coming out in the story, and it's just done in such a way that it is so beautiful, but it adds to this great picture. This world feels so real, so fleshed out at this point that it's just kind of awesome to go dive back into this world and then find out more information. So I love the world building. We added more to it. It was great. The characters themselves, once again, a lot of the character growth tends to happen off page, and that's the same here. There's actually not a ton of character growth that has happened between the last book and this book, because it's only about 3 months. But we do see some growth, or we see that, for example, Toby has now gotten used to her body a little bit more and is relying upon her strengths, her physical strengths. We do see a few other things, but for the most part, we don't see a ton of growth. So, and that's very normal, but this is it's a little bit light even for the October Daye series. This is definitely not the focus of this book. For the characters themselves, our cast of characters in this book is now so big that we can't visit with each and every one of them for any significant period of time in every book. But in this book, we do get a lot more Danny. Yay! I was so sad last book because we did not get as much Danny. Danny is a taxi driver. We got a little bit more Shack, which was really nice. We got some more May. It was really good to see some of these characters who have been playing much, much smaller roles in the books previously. So that was nice, and I still continue to love them. The antagonist characters in these books are actually played very, very well, to the point that I detest them. So that's also a bonus. I mean, I guess depending on how you look at it, that is a bonus. But that leads into talking about our plot. I am going to talk about the plot in general, but I want to talk about these two things that I had problems with that are personal problems. So I said that the antagonists are really well written. You hate them. I mean, it's really very similar to like Umbridge in the Harry Potter series where they're so terrible, like you just hate them, right? And the main antagonist in this book, I hate. And I feel that feeling so strongly that it actually makes it really difficult to read. I mean, it's like bonus points to Seanan McGuire for writing this character that I have such strong emotions about, but it does make it a bit unpleasant to read. And then the other part is because we're dealing with goblin fruit, it's a fruit. And so like you can like make a jam out of it that like enhances its capabilities to like give you pleasant dreams. I mean, it's just like it kind of borders into slapstick. Now, the characters do address the fact that this is kind of ridiculous and slapstick, but even with that, and that definitely mitigated how I felt about it, but I still felt it was really ridiculous and was like maybe slightly uncomfortable. So I didn't love those two things. However, the plot itself is really nice. We're finally addressing one of the big elephants in the room and dealing with it, and it's just really nice to see. Everything in the plot seemed to flow from itself. It just made a lot of sense. And other than those two things I mentioned, I really did like it. So there you go. And then lastly, pacing continues to be good. It was not quite as fast paced as the previous two books have been, but it is still really good. There's reasons why the pace kind of slows down a little bit, which I don't really want to get into because it's a little bit spoilery, but it makes sense and it is still pretty good. It never ever really drags. And then the writing itself tends to still be very, very good. The only other thing that I will say about this book is that we have hit the point in the series where you need to read the previous books to get full enjoyment out of it. This is not a series where you can just pick one up and be good. It's not written to be episodic. And so if you do pick up this book without having read the previous books, I honestly don't know if you'll even enjoy it at all, because you'll just be missing so much information that makes it make sense. So that is the word of caution. Please read the books previous to this before you touch this one, and it'll make so much more sense. But that is it, you guys. I really enjoyed this read. Not quite as much as the previous book. I think I gave this one like 4.5 stars, whereas the previous book I gave 5 stars. But overall, it was still very solid, very good. It moved our overarching plot along, and it was really nice. But that's it, you guys. So I am going to go ahead and jump into the spoilery section for this book. If you do not want to be spoiled for this book, you should go ahead and click away now. Bye. Okay, so I had some thoughts. And it was so funny because like when Toby went to the library and she found that book that had the blue Samite cover and she's like, Antigone of Albany, who's this? And I'm like, it's the Lou Shack. I know who it is. And it was just like, oh my gosh, is this where we find out that Antigone of Albany is the Lou Shack? And then, and I wrote it down even in my journal. And then we got to the point where Toby was at the Lou Shack's house and Toby was just like, who's this Antigone of Albany chick? And like the Lou Shack is just so sad at like this generation of fae. Like she's just like, you guys are not getting taught anything anymore. That's me. I am Antigone of Albany. And it was just like, yes. Like I'm so glad we're finally finding that out. And then of course, speaking of like backstory reveals, we finally find out Quentin is the crown prince. And this is so delightful. I've been waiting for this, right? Like Quentin is the crown prince of the High King Solace. And I'm like, oh, it's just so good. So for anybody who is reading along with this series but has not read the series previously, if you actually go back to the book where Jillian was kidnapped by Rachel, you'll actually get some clues that um, uh, that Quentin is the crown prince because Rachel knew. And so anyway, there you go. I thought it was so much fun. Quentin was so happy. He was just like, you get to meet my parents now. This is awesome. And of course, October is just like losing her mind over how frequently she has put him into danger. And it's not like he's replaceable. Like, he's not just some noble's kid. He is a very important kid. And oh my gosh. And she is just losing her mind. And it is so funny. And I love it so much. And then of course at the end when like he's just like, you get to meet my parents, and she's like, oh, okay. It's just so good. I love it. And then of course, one of the other things that I really enjoyed watching was watching Toby just completely manhandle Arden. Toby's just like, but this is your duty and you're going to do your duty, right? And Arden's like, but maybe not. And Toby's like, oh, that doesn't work for me. We're going to do this anyway. And just watching that, it was just really kind of fun because we got this outsider's perspective on Toby and her like band of allies and like what a weird mix of people it actually is. And that's such a great insight. But they still are very, very powerful. They're a very powerful group and they get a lot of stuff done. And so it's just really interesting to watch all of those dynamics. And then lastly, just a note about Toby and Tybalt. Man, are they hard on each other. They almost die so many times. Like, Tybalt almost gave up another life helping Toby. And Toby, of course, is just like running on nothing at the end because the goblin fruit like took all her energy. And I was just like looking at this going, you're almost dead again. Like, oh my gosh, how many times are you going to do this to each other? Now, of course, I know a little bit, like at least through the rest of the series, I know how many times it happens. It's just like, man, you guys, like maybe stop running headlong into danger. That would be great. And then watching Toby and Tybalt and Sylvester as Toby wakes up in Sylvester's no and like Tybalt's not there and she loses her mind. It very much reminded me of like a daughter and like yelling at her dad, basically being like, you don't have to like my boyfriend, but you do need to be respectful. Like, I had flashbacks. Like, let's just say I had some flashbacks there. So that was very, very interesting. But other than that, I didn't really have a ton of spoilery thoughts about this book. So I am going to go ahead and jump into the last section, which are things that are spoilery for the rest of the series. So if you do not want to be spoiled for the rest of the series, you should go ahead and click away now. Bye. Okay, you guys. Last little bit. So a lot of the stuff that the big spoilery for the rest of the series kind of stuff that kind of occurred in this particular book was much more about the Shack and Yura. So obviously we find out that Antigone of Albany and Yura, I don't remember her last name. Actually, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Let's start there. But they absolutely have some animosity. Yura is the firstborn daughter of Titania, and the Lushak is the firstborn daughter of Maeve. And these two kids are at each other and have been for a really long time. But we did start getting clues about that. Like, we got a ton of clues about that animosity, probably because we're going to be addressing that animosity pretty soon. But it was never explicitly stated, but it's like when Toby was reading the book from about the hope chests, obviously the writer is Antigone of Albany or the Lushak, and she lists out who got a hope chest. And it was like a certain number of people who gave really good arguments, a certain number of people who gave really bad arguments. The writer of the book, the Lushak, for safekeeping, and then the Lushak's main enemy for balance sake. And then of course we find out pretty quickly that the hope chest that Evening had was called Golden Green. Like and it's like, okay, so now we have all the pieces. We're starting to get the pieces where it's like Evening, who is also Yura, has a hope chest, and her main rival is the Lushak, and that's where, that's where some of the hope chests are. It all kind of like, oh, all that makes sense. Now, I did think it was interesting that Antigone did not, in the book, did not specify who she was on that list, and we all just have to kind of figure it out later. And then we did get some, sorry, I'm looking down at my notes. We did get some indication that Yura is not actually dead. So the first comes from Magdalene, or Mags, and she says Yura was really hard to kill, even for a firstborn. And we know that Yura didn't really die from Devon because she wasn't killed with iron and silver, and we have been told by the Lushak that that's how you kill the firstborn. So we already knew she wasn't going to be dead, but now we're getting this idea, of course she's not dead, and also she's going to be really hard to kill later, which I think is interesting. And then there is, I think, another clue. I don't remember. So when Toby is changing the balance of the blood of the Nameless Queen, the Nameless Queen is thinking about she and how she is going to kill her. And if you don't know, I mean, it's still a little bit weird, but some people are definitely going to assume the she in question is October. But if I remember correctly, I think that's Yura. If you remember, let me know down below, because that one's bothering me a little bit. And then I do hope that Mags does make another appearance. That's just a little side note. I don't remember if she has since this book, but I really hope we get to see her again, because I really liked her. And then the story at the end, the short story at the end, gave us so much more insight that Toby has a capital D destiny, and the Lushak is going to be involved probably in giving her that quest or whatever it is. It's a big thing that's going to affect Fairy, and I'm so excited to get to it. So we are getting those much more obvious clues about that. And then some of the other things that I noticed were just questions I had. So it's like when Amandine changed the balance of Toby's blood earlier, it burned off all the elf shot, but we weren't really told why. And in this one, again, changing the balance of Toby's blood burned off the goblin fruit addiction. And I'm like, but how does that work? I want to know. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm hoping we get more of that in the future. And then another question I had was just about the lightning bugs that Toby was given, in that she didn't use them all. Does she give them back to the Lushak? Does she hang on to them? Are they going to make another appearance? I hope so. But we're not told what she does with them. And I don't remember if they come back in the books that are already published, but I do hope that they do. And then lastly was just a little bit more speculation about Amandine being the last of the first, because that is, as Toby notes, it is a capitalized title. And so I don't know. We're given this information from Arden about how the last of the first caused the earthquake. Oleander came along and said that the last of the first was going to cause an earthquake, and then there was an earthquake. And I'm sitting here going, okay, were they working together? Were they working separately? But Oleander's like, I can totally make her do an earthquake. Is Amandine even able to make an earthquake, or was it something else? And like, the last of the first is such a like capitalized title that I wonder if it actually really is important, and we're going to find out about it later. Like, I'm so intrigued by this last of the first title. Like, I just want to know. But that is it, you guys. Those are my questions. Those were the things that I did notice. If you have answers to my questions, because I just maybe forgot about the answer to them in the future books, you should let me know. If you can, put them under the cut so that nobody else is spoiled unless they want to be. But please, please answer those questions. And of course, if you have any other comments or questions, or you just want to talk about this book, please leave it down below. But that's all I got. So until next time, guys, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.